If anyone ever tells you never to cross Black Hollow Bridge after sunset, believe them. I laughed when I heard those words. 3 days later I was standing on that same bridge covered in blood while something waited for me in the darkness. My name is Blake Carter, and everything I am about to tell you happened during the fall of 2021 in a small town called Ashcroft, West Virginia. My older sister Emma had recently accepted a teaching position at a public elementary school just outside town. The school was surrounded by thick forests, abandoned mining roads, and scattered farms that looked like they had been forgotten for decades. Emma lived there with her husband Daniel and their 5-year-old daughter Mia. She was also 7 months pregnant with their second child. I had just finished a welding certification course in Ohio and decided to spend a week with them before looking for a full-time job. Ashcroft looked peaceful during the day. Children rode bicycles through quiet streets. Neighbors smiled at each other. Old pickup trucks rolled slowly through town. Nothing about the place felt dangerous. But every evening something changed. The streets became empty much earlier than normal. Store owners locked their doors before sunset. People refused to stay outside after dark. Nobody ever explained why. Whenever I asked, they simply smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. On my second morning, Emma handed Daniel a grocery list. She smiled and said, "The farmer's market is open today. Everything is fresh and cheap. Can you grab everything before they sell out?" Daniel looked at me and laughed. "Looks like you are coming with me, little brother." I grabbed my jacket and followed him outside. His old blue pickup truck was parked beside the house. As we climbed inside, our elderly neighbor stepped onto his porch. His name was Mr. Cooper. He raised his hand and stopped us. "You boys heading into town?" Daniel nodded. "Just the farmer's market. Nothing else." The old man stared at us for several seconds before speaking again. "Be back before dark. And whatever happens, do not stop on Black Hollow Bridge." Daniel smiled politely. "We will be fine." The old man never smiled back. Instead, he quietly walked inside his house and locked the front door, even though it was only 11 in the morning. I looked at Daniel. "Does everyone around here act this strange?" Daniel sighed. "Ever since we moved here, people have been warning us about that bridge. Nobody tells the same story. Some blame accidents. Some blame the river. Others refuse to even say the name out loud. Personally, I think it is just another small-town legend." I laughed. Exactly what I was thinking. The truck rolled down a narrow country road surrounded by endless trees. About 20 minutes later, the forest suddenly opened, and there it was, Black Hollow Bridge. It stretched across a wide dark river that reflected almost no sunlight. Even though the sky was bright, the water underneath looked almost black. For some reason, every sound disappeared as we drove onto the bridge. No birds, no insects, not even the wind. It felt like the entire world had suddenly gone silent. I looked over the side at the motionless water below, and for just a second, I had the strange feeling that something beneath the surface was looking back at me. The strange feeling disappeared the moment we reached the other side of Black Hollow Bridge. I shook my head and laughed at myself. Maybe the silence had simply gotten into my head. Daniel turned on the radio, but all we heard was loud static. He hit the dashboard twice. The music came back for a few seconds. Then the static returned. Finally, he switched it off. Neither of us said a word for the rest of the drive. About 15 minutes later, we reached Ashcroft Farmers Market. The place was packed with people. Fresh vegetables filled long wooden tables. Children ran between the food stalls. The smell of smoked barbecue drifted through the air. Live country music echoed across the market square. For a while, I completely forgot about the bridge. Emma had given us a long shopping list. Milk, bread, fresh vegetables, baby supplies, medicine, cleaning products. By the time we finished shopping, the back of the truck was almost full. As we walked toward the parking area, Daniel suddenly stopped. "You smell that?" I nodded. Someone nearby was smoking fresh pork over an open fire. The smell was incredible. Daniel laughed. "Emma has been craving barbecue for weeks. Let's take some home." We bought several pounds of fresh pork from a local butcher. The butcher wrapped it carefully before handing it over. As he passed the package to Daniel, his smile slowly disappeared. "You boys heading back across Black Hollow tonight?" Daniel answered without thinking. "Yeah, probably after dinner." The butcher froze. His eyes shifted toward the bridge in the distance. Then he quietly said, "You should leave before sunset." Daniel forced a smile. "Another bridge warning." The butcher didn't answer. Instead, he turned around and walked away. By late afternoon, we found an empty picnic area beside the river about half a mile from the market. Several old barbecue pits were scattered beneath tall oak trees. Daniel placed half of the pork over the fire. The rest stayed wrapped inside the cooler for Emma. While the meat cooked, Daniel walked back toward the market to buy drinks. "Stay here. I'll be back in 10 minutes." I sat alone beside the fire watching the smoke drift into the trees. The forest around me felt strangely quiet. A few minutes later I noticed an elderly man slowly walking toward me. He wore faded overalls, old leather boots, and carried a carved wooden cane. His long gray beard reached almost to his chest. He smiled kindly. "That smells better than anything they've sold here in years. Mind if an old man joins you?" "Not at all. Please have a seat." We talked for several minutes. He introduced himself as Walter Hayes. He had lived in Ashcroft his entire life. When Daniel returned, the three of us shared food and talked about fishing, hunting, and old mining stories. Walter was funny. He reminded me of my grandfather. As the sun slowly dropped behind the mountains, Walter noticed the cooler sitting beside my chair. "You taking the rest of that meat home?" Daniel nodded. "Emma's been craving barbecue." Walter's smile disappeared instantly. "Take everything else. Leave the pork here." Neither of us understood. "Why?" Walter looked directly at me. "Because whatever lives beneath Black Hollow Bridge follows the smell of fresh blood. And tonight, that meat will bring it to your doorstep." Daniel chuckled awkwardly. "Sir, we appreciate the concern, but we don't believe in ghost stories." Walter leaned closer. "This isn't a ghost story. It's a warning." There was absolute silence between us. The fire cracked softly beside our feet. Then Walter reached into his jacket and pulled out a tiny cloth pouch tied with black string. He placed it in Daniel's hand. "If something blocks your path on that bridge, throw this into the river. Do not stop. Do not speak. And no matter what you hear, do not look behind you." Daniel thanked him politely, even though I could tell he still didn't believe a single word. The last sunlight disappeared behind the mountains. The entire forest became dark far faster than it should have. Walter stood up slowly. "You still have time. Leave now, because once the sun is gone, she starts looking for her family." Daniel and I exchanged amused looks. We loaded the truck, kept every package, including the pork, and drove toward Black Hollow Bridge. Neither of us noticed that Walter Hayes never once walked toward the road. He simply stood beside the trees, watching us disappear into the darkness. The road back to Ashcroft was almost completely empty. Only our headlights cut through the darkness. The trees on both sides of the road looked taller than before. Their branches stretched over the pavement like giant hands. Daniel glanced at the dashboard clock. 7:23. "We should be home in 20 minutes. I looked out the passenger window. The forest felt different now. There were no crickets, no frogs, no birds, just complete silence. Even the truck engine sounded strangely distant. A few miles later, the radio suddenly turned on by itself. Neither of us had touched it. Instead of music, we heard a woman's voice. Soft, broken, almost like someone whispering through water. Daniel reached over and switched the radio off. The voice stopped. 5 seconds later, it turned back on. This time, the whisper sounded closer. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew one thing. She wasn't singing. She was crying. Daniel pulled the power cable from the radio. The speakers finally went silent. Neither of us laughed anymore. About 5 minutes later, the outline of Black Hollow Bridge appeared ahead. The old steel structure stood alone against the night sky. Only one streetlight worked near the entrance. It flickered slowly. On, off, on, off. As we got closer, I noticed something strange. Every vehicle parked near the bridge was facing away from it, almost as if nobody wanted to look toward the river. Daniel slowed the truck. Probably just old locals being weird again. I nodded, but my stomach suddenly felt tight. The truck rolled onto the bridge, halfway across. The engine coughed, then lost power. The headlights dimmed. The truck slowed to a crawl. "Come on, not now," Daniel muttered while turning the key again. The engine refused to respond. Finally, the truck stopped completely. The silence returned. It was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Daniel tried starting the engine again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Then I noticed something. "Daniel, look ahead." About 200 yards away, at the far end of the bridge, someone was standing beside the guardrail. A woman. She wore what looked like an old white dress. The fabric hung in long torn strips. Her dark hair covered her face completely. She wasn't moving. She simply stood there, watching us. Daniel whispered, "Maybe she needs help." Before I could answer, the woman slowly tilted her head. Not a normal movement. Her neck bent far beyond what should have been possible. Then, without lifting her feet, she began sliding toward us. The distance between us grew smaller, but her legs never moved. I felt every hair on my body stand up. Daniel grabbed the keys with shaking hands. "Start, please start." The engine stayed dead. The woman kept coming. 50 yards away now. 40, 30. Then I noticed something even worse. She wasn't alone. Behind the bridge railing, just above the black water, dozens of pale faces were slowly rising from the river, watching us. not speaking, not blinking, just staring. Daniel's breathing became heavy. His hands were trembling so badly he dropped the keys onto the floor. I bent down to grab them, and suddenly remembered the small cloth pouch Walter had given us. Daniel? The old man. The pouch. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket, pulled it out, rolled down his window, and threw it into the dark river below. The moment the pouch touched the water, a loud scream exploded across the bridge. Not from one person, from hundreds. The truck engine roared back to life on its own. The headlights became brighter than ever. Daniel slammed the truck into drive, pressed the accelerator to the floor, and we shot forward across the bridge. I looked through the passenger window. The woman was no longer standing ahead of us. She was running beside the truck, keeping the exact same speed. Her hair still covered her face, but now, she was smiling, and her smile was far too wide to belong to any human. Daniel pushed the truck as fast as it would go. 60, 70, almost 80 miles an hour. The woman never fell behind. She stayed beside my window, matching our speed perfectly. Her bare feet never touched the ground. She glided across the bridge without making a single sound. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something about her face kept pulling my eyes back. Slowly her hair began moving away from her face, not because of the wind. It was moving by itself. Long black strands lifted into the air, as if invisible hands were pulling them back. I finally saw her eyes. They were completely white. No pupils, no color, just empty white eyes staring directly into mine. Then she smiled wider. Her mouth stretched almost to her ears. Blood slowly dripped from the corners of her lips. I screamed. Daniel looked toward my side for only a second. The woman was gone, completely gone. The bridge ended a few moments later. As soon as we passed the old St. Michael Chapel, the heavy feeling disappeared. The air suddenly felt normal again. Crickets started chirping. The radio came back to life with country music. Everything looked completely ordinary. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Emma cannot know about this. Not a single word. She is pregnant. The last thing she needs is more stress. I nodded. Agreed. When we reached the house, Emma opened the front door before we even parked. Where have you two been? I've been calling both of you for almost an hour. Daniel checked his phone. 23 missed calls. No signal had shown the entire drive home. Now every notification arrived at once. That's strange, Daniel muttered. We never lost signal on that road before. Emma placed one hand on her stomach. I don't know why, but I have felt uncomfortable ever since sunset. Like someone has been standing outside the house watching me. Daniel forced a smile. You're probably just tired. Let's get dinner ready. Everything will be fine. While Emma prepared the food, I carried the groceries inside. As I placed the cooler on the kitchen counter, I noticed something odd. The plastic wrapping around the pork was torn open. Neither Daniel nor I had opened it. Fresh blood had leaked across the bottom of the cooler, slowly dripping onto the kitchen floor. Daniel looked at me. Did you open this? I shook my head. Number. Before either of us could say another word, Mia walked into the kitchen holding her favorite teddy bear. She looked toward the back window and smiled. Mommy, the sad lady is back. The room instantly became silent. Emma frowned. What sad lady, sweetheart? Mia pointed toward the dark backyard, the one standing by the swing. She says she's looking for her baby. Daniel rushed to the window and pulled the curtain shut. Nobody is outside. You must have imagined it. But Mia kept staring at the covered window, still smiling. She says the baby is inside this house. That night nobody mentioned the bridge again. After dinner, Mia fell asleep on the couch. Emma complained that her stomach felt unusually tight. Daniel assumed it was normal pregnancy discomfort. Around midnight, a loud crash echoed through the house. I jumped out of bed. Daniel ran into the hallway at the same time. The sound had come from Mia's bedroom. We opened the door. The room was freezing. Every toy was scattered across the floor. The bedroom window stood wide open. Cold wind rushed inside. Mia sat upright in bed, wide awake, looking toward the open window. She spoke in a calm voice that did not sound like her own. She says she finally found us. And this time, she isn't leaving alone. Daniel slammed the bedroom window shut. The moment the glass locked into place, the freezing wind stopped. The room became silent again. Mia slowly turned toward us. Her eyes looked normal. She blinked twice, then asked why everyone was staring at her. She remembered nothing. Daniel carried her back to bed. Within seconds, she was asleep again, as if nothing had happened. Neither of us slept for the rest of the night. Every few minutes we heard footsteps outside the house, slow, heavy, always circling the walls. Whenever I looked through the curtains, nothing was there. Around 2 in the morning, Emma suddenly cried out from the bedroom. Daniel and I ran inside. She was sitting upright in bed, holding her stomach, Sweat covered her face. Something is wrong, she whispered. The baby hasn't moved for hours. Daniel immediately grabbed the truck keys. We're going to the hospital. Now. 10 minutes later we were back on the same road. Emma sat in the back beside Mia, trying to stay calm. I sat in the passenger seat. Neither Daniel nor I mentioned the bridge, but we both knew it was the only road to Ashcroft Regional Medical Center. The closer we got, the heavier the air became. Without warning, the truck headlights flickered. Then every light inside the cab went dark. Only the engine kept running. For 3 long seconds, we drove through complete darkness. Then the lights came back. Emma gasped, "Did you see that woman?" Daniel and I looked at each other. Our blood ran cold. This was the first time Emma had mentioned her. "Where?" Daniel asked quietly. Emma pointed straight ahead. She was standing in the middle of the road, holding a baby. Now she's gone. Neither Daniel nor I had seen anyone. The road ahead had been empty. Daniel pressed harder on the accelerator. We finally reached the entrance to Black Hollow Bridge. Neither of us breathed. The truck rolled onto the bridge. Everything became silent again. Halfway across, a loud knock hit the roof. Then another. Then another. It sounded like someone was crawling across the top of the truck. Mia woke up crying. "Mommy, the lady is sitting on our roof." Emma looked up in confusion. "What lady?" Daniel shouted. "Don't look outside. No matter what happens, don't look outside." The knocking grew faster. It moved from the roof, down the windshield, across my passenger door, then directly behind my seat. Something was moving around the truck, searching for a way inside. I slowly looked into the side mirror. I wish I hadn't. The woman was clinging to the back of the truck, her fingers bent like long black claws. Her white dress fluttered behind her. Her face was inches away from the rear window. She wasn't looking at us anymore. She was staring directly at Emma. Then, very slowly, she lifted one finger and pointed at Emma's stomach. At that exact second, Emma screamed. The baby kicked so hard she doubled over in pain. Daniel floored the accelerator. The truck shot off the bridge. The moment we passed St. Michael Chapel, the knocking stopped. Everything became quiet. None of us spoke until we reached the hospital. Doctors rushed Emma inside for an emergency examination. Daniel and I waited outside the examination room. Neither of us said a word. Almost 40 minutes later, a doctor walked toward us with a small smile. "The baby is alive. The heartbeat is strong. Your wife is experiencing severe stress and dehydration. She needs rest. Nothing more." Daniel finally breathed again. For the first time that night, we thought it was over. We had no idea. The real nightmare had only just begun. The doctor admitted Emma for observation until morning. She finally fell asleep after receiving medication. Mia was exhausted and curled up beside her mother without saying a word. Daniel and I stepped into the hospital hallway. Neither of us wanted to talk about what had happened on the bridge. We both knew we had seen the same thing, but saying it out loud would make it real. Around 3 in the morning, a nurse approached us. "You two should get some coffee. It might be a long night." Daniel nodded. "Come on, let's grab something from the vending machines." The hospital cafeteria was closed. Only a small vending area remained open. As I poured coffee into a paper cup, I noticed Daniel staring through the large glass doors leading to the parking lot. His face turned pale. "Blake, don't react. Just look at the reflection in the glass. Not outside. The reflection." I slowly lifted my eyes. At first I only saw the empty parking lot. Then, in the reflection, a woman was standing beside our truck. She wasn't visible outside, only in the glass. Her head was tilted. Both hands rested on the passenger door. She was looking directly at us. I spun around. The parking lot was completely empty. When I looked back at the glass, she was gone. Neither of us finished our coffee. We returned upstairs without saying a word. Around 5 in the morning, the doctors discharged Emma. Everything appeared normal. She smiled weakly. "See, I told you it was probably nothing." Daniel forced himself to smile back. "Let's just go home." The sunrise had begun. Soft orange light covered the mountains. For the first time since yesterday, the world felt alive again. We honestly believed daylight had ended whatever had been following us. Halfway home, we stopped at a small gas station. Daniel filled the truck while I went inside to buy water. The cashier looked exhausted. As I paid, he noticed the dirt covering my boots. "You crossed Black Hollow last night, didn't you?" I froze. "How do you know that?" He pointed toward my boots. "Black mud. Only one place around here has mud that color." I didn't answer. The cashier leaned closer. "If you hear someone calling your name tonight, don't answer, even if it sounds exactly like someone you love." I walked back outside without another word. Daniel could tell something was wrong. Another warning. I nodded. We climbed back into the truck. The road home seemed peaceful, until we reached the final curve before St. Michael Chapel. Daniel suddenly slammed on the brakes. Standing in the middle of the road, about 50 yards ahead, was Walter Hayes, the old man from the market. He lifted one hand, signaling for us to stop. Daniel lowered the window. Walter looked terrified. "You brought her home, didn't you?" Daniel whispered. "We didn't mean to." Walter's eyes filled with fear. "She never wanted the meat. That was only the scent she followed. She wanted the child from the very beginning." Before either of us could respond, a loud truck horn exploded behind us. Daniel looked into the mirror for barely a second. When we turned back, Walter had vanished. There was nowhere he could have gone. Only an empty road, and the morning fog drifting across the pavement. Daniel stepped out to look around. Nothing. No footprints. No sign that anyone had ever been standing there. Then his phone rang. It was Deputy Ryan Brooks. Daniel answered. His expression changed instantly. When he hung up, he looked at me without saying anything for several seconds. Finally he spoke. "Blake, there's something I need to show you. It's about Walter Hayes." And after hearing it, "You're never going to look at that bridge the same way again." Daniel turned the truck around without explaining anything to Emma. He simply told her we needed to stop by the sheriff's office before going home. Emma was exhausted and didn't argue. 20 minutes later we pulled into the Ashcroft Sheriff's Department. Deputy Ryan Brooks was already waiting outside. He looked nervous, almost like he didn't want to have this conversation. He led Daniel and me into a small records room, while Emma stayed in the truck with Mia. Ryan closed the door behind us. Then he placed an old newspaper on the table. "Take a look." The paper was yellow with age. Across the front page was a black and white photograph. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. It was Walter Hayes, the same man who had shared dinner with us at the market. The same man who gave Daniel the cloth pouch. The same man who warned us not to cross Black Hollow Bridge. I looked at the headline. "Local man dies saving family from bridge accident." Date, October 14th, 20 years earlier. I stared at Ryan. This has to be some kind of mistake. We met him yesterday. Ryan slowly shook his head. "Number. You couldn't have. Walter Hayes died on that bridge 20 years ago. His truck was hit by another vehicle. He pushed a young family out of the way before the crash. He died instantly." Daniel felt the color leave his face. "That's impossible." He gave me this. Daniel reached into his jacket. The cloth pouch. It was gone. Every pocket was empty. Ryan frowned. "What pouch?" Neither of us answered. Ryan unlocked an old metal cabinet and removed a thick file. People have reported seeing Walter for years, always before something terrible happens near Black Hollow Bridge. He never hurts anyone. He only warns them. Some listen, most don't. Ryan turned another page. Inside were photographs of crashed cars, police reports, missing person files, medical records. Every single case had one thing in common. Pregnant women. My hands started shaking. Why only pregnant women? Ryan looked toward the window before answering. Because according to every story passed down in this town, the woman on that bridge never stopped searching for the child she lost. She doesn't attack everyone. She searches, she watches, and when she finds someone carrying new life, she follows them. Daniel suddenly stood up. "Emma, we left her alone outside." The three of us sprinted toward the parking lot. Daniel threw open the truck door. Emma was awake, but something was wrong. She wasn't moving. She was staring through the windshield. Her lips were slightly open. Daniel grabbed her shoulders. "Emma, talk to me." Slowly she raised one trembling hand and pointed toward the opposite side of the street. Standing beside an old oak tree, across from the sheriff's office, was the woman. This time we all saw her. Deputy Ryan, Daniel, me, even Emma. Her white dress hung motionless despite the wind. Her pale arms cradled something invisible against her chest. She gently rocked it back and forth, like a mother trying to comfort a crying baby. Then, for the first time, she lifted her face completely. There was no anger, no smile, only endless sadness. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She looked directly at Emma, then slowly mouthed for silent words. "Give me my baby." The air around us became freezing cold. Every police radio inside the building erupted with deafening static, and the lights across the entire street went dark at the exact same moment. The entire street went black. Traffic lights stopped working. Store signs flickered once and died. Only the sheriff's emergency generator kept a few lights glowing inside the station. For several seconds nobody moved. Then every police radio inside the building started broadcasting the same sound. A woman crying, not speaking, not screaming, just crying. The sound echoed through the hallways. Deputy Ryan grabbed his flashlight and drew his service weapon. "Stay inside. Nobody leaves," He stepped toward the front entrance. The crying stopped instantly. Ryan opened the door. The street was empty. The woman had disappeared. Only the old oak tree remained. Its branches swayed even though there was no wind. Ryan slowly lowered his weapon. I don't like this. Not one bit. Daniel helped Emma out of the truck. She looked exhausted, but something about her face had changed. She wasn't looking at any of us. She kept staring toward the bridge, almost as if she could see it from miles away. In a quiet voice she whispered, "She says she's waiting." Daniel grabbed her shoulders. Who is waiting? Emma blinked several times, confused. What are you talking about? I didn't say anything. Daniel and I looked at each other. She had spoken. We both heard it, but Emma had no memory of saying those words. Ryan walked back outside carrying another old file. There's one person left who might know how to stop this. His name is Father Thomas. He has lived beside St. Michael Chapel for over 40 years. If anyone knows what is happening, it's him. Without wasting another minute, we drove to the chapel. The old stone church stood alone on a hill overlooking Black Hollow Bridge. Morning sunlight covered the valley, yet the bridge below still looked darker than everything around it. Father Thomas was already waiting outside, as if he knew we were coming. He was an elderly man with silver hair and tired eyes. The moment he saw Emma, his expression changed. He quietly made the sign of the cross, then looked at Daniel. You crossed the bridge after sunset, didn't you? Daniel slowly nodded. Father Thomas closed his eyes, then whispered, "We're too late." He invited us inside the chapel. The air smelled of old wood and candles. Colorful stained glass covered the walls. For the first time in 2 days, I actually felt safe. Father Thomas walked toward a locked cabinet. Inside he removed a worn leather journal. This belonged to the first priest who served Ashcroft almost 70 years ago. Everything we know about Black Hollow Bridge is written here. He carefully opened the journal. Most pages were filled with faded handwriting. Then he stopped on one page. There was an old drawing. It showed the same woman we had seen, standing on the bridge, holding a child. Father Thomas pointed at the picture. Her real name was Eleanor Whitmore. She wasn't evil. She was a school teacher. She was 8 months pregnant when several escaped convicts attacked her while she was crossing the bridge. They murdered her, then threw both her and her unborn child into the river. Nobody found her body for nearly a week. Daniel quietly asked, "Then why is she killing innocent people?" Father Thomas looked down at the journal. Because she no longer knows who she is. Every year her grief grows stronger. Every child she takes, she believes is the one stolen from her. The chapel became completely silent. Then, without warning, a loud knock echoed from the front door. One knock, then another, then another. Father Thomas slowly looked toward the entrance. His face turned completely white. He whispered only for words. She found this place. Nobody moved. The knocking continued. Slow, heavy, patient. Not the kind of knocking made by someone asking to come inside. It sounded like someone already knew the door would eventually open. Father Thomas carefully closed the journal. His hands were shaking. Whatever happens, do not answer that door. The knocking stopped. For a few seconds the chapel became completely silent. Then we heard footsteps. Not outside. Inside. They came from the hallway leading to the old storage rooms. Impossible. There was only one entrance to the chapel. Ryan drew his pistol again. Stay behind me. He slowly walked toward the hallway. Daniel followed with a heavy brass candle holder in his hands. I picked up a wooden cross that leaned against the wall. Every instinct told me to run. Instead, we followed the sound. Step, step, step. The footsteps suddenly stopped outside a small wooden door. Father Thomas whispered, "That room has been locked for years. Nobody uses it anymore." Ryan reached for the handle. It was already unlocked. He slowly pushed the door open. The room was empty. Dust covered everything. Old church benches, broken picture frames, boxes stacked against the walls. Nothing else. Ryan lowered his weapon. False alarm. Before he could finish speaking, one of the boxes crashed onto the floor by itself. Then another, then another. Something invisible was moving through the room. Fast, circling us. The temperature dropped so quickly our breath became visible. Emma suddenly gasped. "She's here." All of us turned toward her. She wasn't looking at us. She was staring into the far corner of the room. I followed her eyes. At first I saw nothing. Then, very slowly, a woman stepped out of the darkness. The same torn white dress, the same pale skin, but this time she looked different. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She was holding the transparent outline of a tiny baby in her arms. The child looked no older than a newborn. Its body faded in and out like smoke. The woman gently rocked it, then looked down. The baby disappeared. Her expression instantly changed. Her face twisted into panic. She began searching the floor, looking beneath broken chairs, opening empty boxes, moving faster and faster, almost like a desperate mother searching for her missing child. Then she stopped. Her head slowly turned toward Emma, toward her stomach. She smiled, not because she was happy, because she believed she had finally found her baby. Father Thomas stepped in front of Emma. In a loud voice he began praying. The woman screamed. Every stained glass window inside the chapel exploded at the same time. Glass rained across the floor. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then a child's laugh echoed through the chapel. Not Mia, not Emma's unborn baby. A laugh none of us had ever heard before. When the emergency lights finally flickered back on, Emma was gone. She had vanished without making a sound, and the front door of the chapel was standing wide open. Daniel ran out of the chapel before anyone could stop him. Emma, he shouted her name over and over. His voice echoed across the empty hillside. There was no answer. Ryan called for backup. Within minutes, sheriff's deputies surrounded the church. They searched every room, every hallway, every inch of the surrounding woods. Nothing. It was as if Emma had disappeared into thin air. Mia started crying uncontrollably. She kept pointing toward Black Hollow Bridge. Mommy went with the sad lady. Daniel fell to his knees. His hands were covered in blood from the broken glass. He looked completely broken. Father Thomas quietly walked over to him. She isn't dead. Daniel looked up. How do you know? Because if she were, the spirit would have disappeared. Instead, she's still waiting, which means Emma is still alive. Ryan ordered everyone into their vehicles. The search spread across the forest. Police drones, search dogs, volunteers. Within an hour, nearly 50 people were looking for Emma. Nothing. Not a single footprint. Not a single piece of clothing. No phone. No trail. The dogs refused to go near Black Hollow Bridge. Every one of them stopped at the entrance, whining, pulling backward, as if something on the bridge terrified them. Around noon, a deputy shouted from the riverbank. Everyone rushed toward him. Fresh footprints. Bare feet. They began at the edge of the bridge, walked across the muddy riverbank, then simply stopped. There were no return footprints. No signs of anyone entering the water. No signs of anyone leaving. Just footprints, ending in the middle of the mud, as if whoever made them had vanished into the air. Father Thomas slowly knelt beside the tracks, then picked something up. It was Emma's wedding ring. Daniel recognized it instantly. She never took it off, not even once. Ryan quietly asked, "What does this mean?" Father Thomas stared toward the dark water beneath the bridge. "She's calling us." Daniel stood up immediately. "Then let's go. Right now." Father Thomas grabbed his arm. "Number, not before sunset." Daniel looked confused. "Why wait?" "Because she only opens the path when the sun goes down." Blake, Ryan, Daniel, none of you are going there alone. Tonight, we cross Black Hollow Bridge together, and if we fail, none of us will ever come back. The sun slowly began sinking behind the mountains. The shadows stretched across the river, and for the first time, the water beneath Black Hollow Bridge started moving against the current, as if something beneath the surface was rising to meet us. The sky turned deep orange as the last sunlight disappeared behind the mountains. Every deputy except Ryan refused to go any farther. Some made excuses, others simply admitted the truth. They were terrified. One of the older officers quietly removed the badge from his chest and handed it to Ryan. "I have a family. I'm sorry. I'm not crossing that bridge again." Ryan didn't argue. He simply nodded. Within minutes, every police vehicle drove away. The flashing lights disappeared down the road, leaving only 4 people. Me, Daniel, Ryan, and Father Thomas. The old priest carried a small wooden box wrapped in iron chains. I noticed him holding it tightly against his chest. "What's inside?" I asked. He looked at me without answering. "Let's hope we never have to open it." The 4 of us stepped onto Black Hollow Bridge. The temperature dropped immediately. Our flashlights barely reached 20 feet ahead. A thick white fog rolled across the steel bridge, swallowing everything behind us. I looked back. The road we had just walked across was gone. Only darkness remained. Ryan stopped. "This isn't normal fog." Father Thomas whispered, "Keep walking. Do not stop. Do not answer anyone who calls your name, even if it's Emma, even if it's your own mother." We continued forward. Halfway across the bridge, someone laughed behind us. It was Mia. "Daddy, wait for me." Daniel froze. His entire body stiffened. That was Mia's voice. I grabbed his arm. "Don't. Remember what Father Thomas said." Daniel closed his eyes and kept walking. The voice came again. Closer this time. "Daddy, I'm scared. Please don't leave me." Tears rolled down Daniel's face, but he never turned around. A few more steps, then another voice. "Blake." It was my father. The exact voice I had heard growing up. Impossible. My father had died 6 years earlier. "Son, help me, please." I felt my feet stop moving. Every memory of him rushed into my mind. The voice sounded so real, so desperate. Then Father Thomas shouted, "It's lying. Keep moving." I forced myself to take another step. The voice instantly changed. It became angry, then inhuman. A horrible growl echoed across the bridge. The fog around us began twisting. Shadows started appearing inside it. Men, women, children, dozens of transparent figures, standing silently on both sides of the bridge, watching us pass. None of them had eyes, only empty black holes where their faces should have been. Ryan whispered, "Dear God, how many people died here?" Nobody answered. We reached the center of the bridge. The air became so cold it hurt to breathe. Then the river exploded. A massive wave crashed upward, far higher than any natural wave could. Dark water poured across the bridge. Something huge moved beneath the surface, not swimming, walking, slowly rising toward us. Father Thomas placed the chained wooden box on the ground. His face had gone completely pale. He looked at Daniel. "Whatever happens next, protect Emma. Do not protect me." Before Daniel could respond, a pale hand slowly emerged from the black water. Then another, then another. Dozens of hands gripped the edge of the bridge, pulling something, or someone, out of the river. And then, Emma's voice echoed through the darkness. "Daniel, please help me. I'm down here. I'm so cold." Daniel ran toward the edge of the bridge before anyone could stop him. I grabbed the back of his jacket with everything I had. "Don't. It isn't her." Daniel fought against me. "Blake, let me go. She's alive. She's down there." Her voice came again, closer this time. "Daniel, please. Our baby. Save our baby." Daniel broke free and reached the bridge railing. He looked down into the river. His entire body froze. Tears filled his eyes. I slowly stepped beside him. There was nothing below us, only black water. "No, Emma. No one." Then Daniel whispered, "She's looking at me." I turned toward him. "Who?" He didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the river. Suddenly, a pair of pale hands shot out from beneath the bridge. They grabbed Daniel's wrists. Before anyone could react, he was pulled over the railing. Ryan lunged forward and caught Daniel's jacket at the last second. "Help me," Ryan shouted. Father Thomas and I grabbed Ryan. The four of us struggled as something beneath the bridge tried dragging Daniel into the river. Daniel screamed in pain. Its hands were freezing. I could feel them. They're pulling me down. The river below began bubbling violently. Then, slowly, the woman rose from the water. Not walking, floating. She held Emma in her arms. Emma looked unconscious. Her white hospital gown was soaked. Her head rested against the woman's shoulder. The spirit gently brushed Emma's hair away from her face, like a loving mother. Then she looked at Daniel. Her empty white eyes filled with tears. In a voice that sounded almost human, she whispered, "I only wanted my baby." Father Thomas slowly stepped forward. "You were wronged. Your child was stolen. But this isn't your family. This isn't your child." For the first time, the spirit looked confused. She stared at Emma's stomach, then back at the empty river, as if memories were fighting inside her mind. The bridge began shaking. The water beneath us roared louder and louder. Father Thomas knelt, opened the chained wooden box. Inside was an old silver cross, wrapped in a faded piece of white cloth. He lifted it toward the spirit. "Your child is waiting for you. You don't belong here anymore." The woman's face changed. Her terrifying smile disappeared. She looked frightened, almost lost. Then, a tiny child's laugh echoed across the river. Not evil, gentle, peaceful. Everyone turned. Standing at the opposite end of the bridge was the glowing outline of a small little boy, no older than 3. He smiled at the woman, then reached out both hands. The woman looked back at Emma one last time. Slowly, she lowered her to the bridge. Emma's body slid gently onto the pavement. The spirit took one trembling step toward the glowing child, then another. For the first time, she smiled like a normal mother. She reached the little boy, held his tiny hand. Both of them looked at us one final time. Then their bodies dissolved into thousands of tiny lights. The lights drifted upward into the night sky, until they completely disappeared. At the exact same moment, the freezing air became warm. The fog vanished. The river became calm. And for the first time in decades, Black Hollow Bridge fell completely silent. But as Daniel rushed toward Emma, Father Thomas quietly looked at the water. His expression didn't change. Very softly, so quietly that only I heard him. He whispered, "That wasn't the only thing living in this river." So this was the story of Black Hollow Bridge. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more terrifying true-style horror stories, then make sure to like, share, and follow Nightmare Files. And if you have a creepy experience of your own, send it to us because your story could be featured in our next video. Until next time, stay safe and never ignore a warning that comes too late.